You can fly, you can hide, you can close your mind, but I'm still on the run, trying to escape the prison in my mind.
Can it, Doug?
I don't think it should be a surprise to learn that I'm a fan of the X-Files. You've seen the name of the show, right? So of course, a while ago, I took the chance to play a pretty bonkers but mid FPS game because David Duchovny voiced the main character. And then a certain commenter let me know about the existence of XIII, another FPS game where the protagonist is voiced by Fox Mulder. I put it on the list and resolved to come back to it one day. That day has come. XIII is a game that has been plaguing me for months now. I started working on this project back in October of 2022. Part of why it has taken me so long is because I started reading the Belgian comic the game is based on. So unlike the last few games, I will actually have a bit to say in the story section. Another part is that I had a near hour-long recording of this script turn out to be unusable. This project is somehow cursed, but I am determined to see this through. I have given in to sunk cost fallacy. Now let's talk development. XIII was made by Ubisoft Paris and released on November 18th, 2003 for the personal computer, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. Ubi Paris has a bit of history to it. It was the first in-house studio the company opened in 1992. Ubi Paris originally did the work on the Rayman series before Ubisoft landed the Tom Clancy license. Afterwards, they mostly became the Just Dance Ghost Recon minds. I don't mention them much, but Ubisoft is another beloved conglomerate. They lead the way in formulating the design of their latest time vampires. I personally haven't purchased a new product from the company since the release of Far Cry 5. XIII was originally announced in March of 2002 and shown off at E3 2002. A non-specific release date of early 2003 was set alongside trailers without gameplay. Later that same year, it was announced that there would be a delay in release to later in 2003. Ubisoft said they planned to expand the game's features and add specific content. That first part might be Bologna, because the game was in a playable state at ECTS 2002. The few videos I could find show essentially the same docks level from the completed game, including the helicopter boss fight. I think the real reason for the delay is that second part. The vague statement, add specific content. This content may have been the casting of multiple Hollywood types. You already know Mulder's in the mix, but what about Mayor West and Eve? To me, it smells like an executive on too much coke got involved. My hunch is that the game was close to complete. They either dropped the original voice actors for Hollywood or planned on Hollywood but had scheduling conflicts. However, this is pure Columbian-grade semi-educated speculation as I cannot find evidence to back up these claims. XIII would release in the holiday season of 2003 to middling reviews and low sales. To be fair, it was a competitive fourth quarter for gaming, but it only had to vie against games like Call of Duty, Rainbow Six 3, Max Payne 2, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, Morrowind, and Beyond Good and Evil. Notice how like half of those games are other Ubisoft titles. It's almost like they wanted XIII to fail. Might have just been unlucky though. The game would eventually gain a cult following over the years, but never received a proper sequel. And no, I don't count the mobile game or the hidden object game. Someone must have been arguing for it for a very long time because in 2019, a remake was announced by Microids. It was released in November of 2020 and, well, I'll just let the reviews speak for themselves. After significant updates, it's not getting anything favorable. Yet another reforged instead of a remaster. I expect nothing less from the French. The visual presentation of XIII is striking to say the least. The choice to do cell shading has helped this game hold up visually. It hides ugly models, lack of lighting effects, and occasional subpar texture work. I do enjoy how the game is really leaning into a comic book aesthetic. Things like stylizing picture-in-picture as comic book panels, the cheesy onomatopoeia when knocking out guards, and the opening to each level sells it all. Once again, a good aesthetic goes a very long way. XIII needs a bit of tweaking to run properly these days, especially if you want the game to run in 16:9 or feel the urge to play the multiplayer. Thankfully, some fans have gone out of their way to create the 13 Plus patch, which does a whole lot of other additional things that I don't have the time to go over. What I will say is that performance-wise, the game runs smooth after patching. It never crashed on me, and I think it hitched on me like twice during my playthrough. Fun fact, XIII runs on Unreal 2. which is why you may see me bunny hopping around sometimes. It's faster than running. While I like 13's visual aesthetic, I have some problems with it too. Like using ultra white for the menus. Along with frying my retinas, it caused the outline of a menu to burn into my monitor. Twice. That is unacceptable to me. I left my system alone for 10 minutes, not 10 hours. I was able to minimize the damage to my screen, but I doubt this is an uncommon problem. So viewer beware, while playing, turn the game's brightness and your screen brightness down. The sound of 13 is fantastic. There's some great sound design work here. A lot of it is stock sound effects, but they are appropriate in this context because of the cartoonish overtones. I really dig all the music too because of how thematically on point it can be. Especially in one of the last levels where things go hectic and the serious spy music starts playing. It gave the feeling of an off-brand James Bond film, in a good way. The voice acting work is pretty great for the most part. Even Adam West both do great jobs, but David Duchovny is yet again not a voice actor. I love the guy, but his acting skills are better paired with the visuals of his chiseled jaw and jet black hair, not with his less than chiseled, slightly nasally deadpan voice.
Listen, Mongoose has found you. Meet me on the roof, and don't go using G-Men for target practice, okay?
The girl from the bank. Here's your HF transmitter.
Jones, can you read me? What? What do you mean amnesia?
Most of the other jobbers are pretty great too, but Colonel Amos sticks out in my mind. Good job, Ken Starcevic. You are the voice of comic book Amos in my head. Overall, the soundscape is a big plus to the game for me. 13 plays eerily similar to some of the James Bond games of the time. You approach missions with a variety of weapons and gadgets. Weapons include a pistol, revolver, shotgun, machine pistol, M16, M60, AK-47, rocket launcher, and a crossbow. Gadgets are a bit of an afterthought in comparison, especially when two of them are different types of health kits. The only two gadgets you'll be using with any consistency are the grappling hook and the lockpick. Even then, their use leans toward gimmick rather than dynamic. 13 was still using a non-regenerative health system with consumable health kits, so you'll have to keep that in mind as you play. It can actually be mildly annoying, yet very tense to have to switch to a med kit mid-fight. There's an armor system too with body armor and helmet armor, but the values seem inconsistent to me. Missions are generally linear and often end suddenly, reminding me this is a PS2 game. You can actually play 13 multiple ways. You can either just run and gun it, or you can try to sneak around, get caught, and run and gun it. Realistically though, it is entirely possible to stealth through levels and is even required in some. The pacifist run seems to be hitting people on the head with chairs and brooms, but I use knives and arrows to pacify from a safe distance. The gunplay is surprisingly hit or miss for me, mostly due to the wild accuracy spread on several weapons. Of note is the M16. It shines in tight corridors, but is completely unreliable at hitting anything more than 20 feet away. The starting pistol has a better chance to kill an enemy with less ammo, but a crossbow bolt to the head will take anyone down. The enemy AI ranges from impressive for the time to incredibly stupid with little consistency. Most will simply run at you guns blazing, but some will actually try to take cover. As you play, your character begins to remember more about themselves and you will unlock various special abilities. This includes being able to breathe underwater for a long period of time. One of my favorite mechanics to come from this is the footsteps sound visuals. These are visual indicators of enemies walking around that can be seen through walls. This is extraordinarily helpful on missions where you cannot get caught. 13's greatest flaw lies in how it saves your game. The checkpoint system is one of the worst I've seen in video games, to the point that I had to replay multiple missions because the game did not save my progress when I quit mid-level. And often there's only one, if any, checkpoints in a level. That alone is most of why it took me a while to get through 13 originally. This game can also be unforgivingly hard sometimes on normal. I had to switch difficulties to arcade about halfway through because I found myself having difficulty dealing with every enemy being a bullet sponge. Normal difficulty is likely meant for more of a stealth-oriented playthrough, while arcade is for the run and gun types like myself. What the? Insert shotgun. One last mechanic I want to mention is the hostage taking system. This is where you can take an innocent person hostage. As long as the hostage is between you and the enemy law enforcement, they will not shoot. But turn for just 1 second and they'll start blasting. Sadly, it only appears a handful of times in the game. Now, in my eyes, the story of 13 is the reason why it has remained a cult classic all these years later. It's an adaptation of the first 5 volumes of a Belgian comic by the same name. Props to John Van Ham and William Vance for writing and drawing the comic respectively. Your main character wakes up on a beach and is saved by not Pamela Anderson. He's in a classic state of aughts amnesia to the point that he doesn't even remember his own name. The only identifying mark is a tattoo of the Roman numeral 13 on his chest. While recovering, he is attacked by a group of armed men sent to assassinate a number 13. They appear to be led by a bald man referred to as the Mongoose. Having survived this encounter, you are now left to figure out who you are and why someone wants you dead. I would love to say more, but I am dangerously close to upsetting the spoilers crowd. But it's a great story, and I actually recommend reading the comic if you don't feel like playing the game. Be warned though, as it's a comic from the 80s and some things have aged a bit poorly. If you want to avoid spoilers for both 13 the game and 13 the comic, go here. The story that plays out in-game hits the same general beats as the first 5 volumes of the comic. However, there's also content from up to volume 8 included into the story. I'll discuss more when we get into the comparison section. 13's only clue is in the form of a safety deposit key from Winslow Bank. There he's greeted as a Mr. Roland and led to the box in question, only for the bomb inside to be activated, one that you had set. You are forced to escape security, but not before overhearing a call by the bank president. He says that 13 is still alive and to call the Mongoose as soon as possible. Escape out the back and into the hand of Colonel Amos FBI, who promptly arrests 13. At the FBI safe house, it is revealed to 13 that he is Captain Steve Rowland of the US military and is wanted for the assassination of William Sheridan, the President of the United States. All the more interesting is the fact that Rowland supposedly died during a mission in Mexico 2 years prior. It all seems too crazy to be true, but the photographic evidence exists. Amnesia or not, Colonel Amos FBI wants answers and 13 is his only lead. It seems like this is the end of the line until an explosion rocks the building. The Mongoose's agents have attacked an FBI safe house of all places. A mysterious woman in the vents voiced by Eve frees 13. She was briefly seen in a scattered memory. A level later, you come face to face with her. She introduces herself as Major Jones, first officer to General Carrington. The General is the only man with the connections to help 13, but he is being held at a military installation in the Appalachians by a General Stadwell. 13 infiltrates said military base that has been taken over by SPAD soldiers, special forces at Stadwell's beck and call. They have pretty much killed everyone on base and locked General Carrington in a cage. Adam West is ecstatic to see 13, his best man, and to get his hands on his cigars. Cue the escort mission to keep Carrington alive while you escape the Emerald Snow Base. On the gondola ride down the mountainside, General Carrington lays out the situation to 13. There are a group of 20 conspirators behind the assassination of the president. Each conspirator has been assigned a number and is given the corresponding tattoo. 13 belonged to Captain Steve Rowland, who did in fact assassinate the president Lee Harvey Oswald style, but he was double-crossed by the other conspirators. You are an agent who underwent plastic surgery to revive the ghost of 13 and identify the leader of the conspiracy, the secretive number 1. The mission went horribly wrong at the 11th hour, and now 13 is a man without a memory or an identity once more. A quick helicopter escape later, our intrepid trio are radioed by an agent named Kim. She is demanding rescue from the Mongoose and his men at Keolani Lake. Jones doesn't seem to like her. Once there, 13 comes face to face with Kim Rowland, number 17. You have some plot flashbacks establishing the facial reconstructive surgery I mentioned earlier. In the present, Kim tells 13 that 3 members of the conspiracy are having a secret meeting at the SPAD's training camp. It's 13's job to know what is discussed. The Mongoose's goons show up and Kim dips from the story. Major Jones continues to throw shade in her direction during the evac attempt. Unfortunately, 13 becomes caught in an avalanche and captured by the Mongoose. He sends 13 straight to Plain Rock, an institution for the criminally insane. Be careful not to piss off the guards or you'll get beaten in the shower. Dr. Johansson is in charge of the facility and seems to be connected to conspiracy based on his familiarity with the Mongoose. This is later confirmed during the prison break boss battle with the bad doctor. He has the number 20 yatted on his chest. Also, when he's killed, 13 has some weirdo vision where you see a bunch of guys dressed in clan robes. We will get there. Trust me. 13 hijacks an ambulance complete with a hot nurse and takes off into the dusty back roads. His best course of action is to eventually ditch the ambulance and nurse to slow down the cops. 13 navigates canyons full of Mongoons until finding out the getaway car is actually a VTOL jet. Sick. The car ride stops at Calvaritas Island, Mexico, home of the Spads camp. Sneaking in is a bit of a challenge. The only unguarded entrance is an underwater pipe. You can't alert the guards either or it will call off the meeting. I had to replay this level a couple of times because of save shenanigans, so I don't particularly enjoy it. It culminates in spying on the meeting between Colonel McCall, General Stadwell, and Generic Senator. It is here in the camp where 13 learns what may be his true identity as Jason Fly. Fly was a fellow Spads member who had a friendly rivalry with the actual Steve Rowland. A flashback conversation hints that it may have been slightly less than friendly. Fly would eventually be transferred to General Carrington's command and seems to have disappeared. After enough sneaking, 13 eavesdrops on the conspiracy meeting. There's going to be a simulated conflict on US soil, codename Operation Total Red. However, this simulation is merely a cover for the hostile takeover of the United States by business interests. It sounds crazy, but fun fact, it's at least based in part off of a real event called the Business Plot. TLDR, US business leaders in the 1930s may have tried to create a fascist paramilitary organization to overthrow FDR as the president and install former General Smedley Butler to power. Good thing Butler snitched early into the plot, or else World War II might have been a very different conflict. Now back to the video, Jerry. The conspiratorial conversation has a few key details like a handoff of a supporters list and the confirmed theft of Steve Rowland's personal file from the Pentagon. Something worth noting as well is that the mysterious number 1 called off the search for Kim Rowland, number 17. He quizzically remarks that he has something she will come and claim. Regardless, the contents of the conversation have been captured by the mic 13 planted, and now it's time for the Great Escape. And no escape is complete without an explosive diversion. Retracing your steps, 13 comes face to face with Colonel McCall, number 11, who is very pissed at your antics destroying his base. One boss fight later, and it's time to stow away on a secret underground submarine. The USS Patriot is a pretty great series of levels. 13 has to stealthily follow the Admiral 7 around the ship to overhear his conversation with Numero Uno. The ship is redirecting from its unknown original course to Maryland. 13 takes a memory nap before being awoken to the sounds of alarms and angry sailors. They seem to have found a stowaway. Fighting his way through the sub culminates in a boss battle with 7. But 13 isn't in the clear yet because now he has to fight his way out of the submarine bay. This actually leads to a bit of underwater combat involving enemy divers and a spear gun. It's a fun moment of gameplay that has become stuck in my head. The fact that your other weapons don't work underwater and you have to rely upon a single-shot spear gun adds a lot of tension to the fight. Not to mention that you can only hold your breath for so long while your foes are in scuba gear. The goal behind all the bloodshed on the docks is to meet up with Carrington at Quay 33. Apparently a quay is a floating platform built along the side of a waterway. I had a great joke here about translation errors combined with a smooth transition to the next scene, but my friend who helps edit these scripts called me a quayfish, so we get this instead. However, there's a helicopter boss fight, so mistakes should be forgotten. Past the crashed helicopter, 13 is once again in the hand of Colonel Amos FBI, but thankfully Carrington is there to back 13 up. Colonel Amos FBI is convinced by the new mountain of evidence that you are not Steve Rowland after all. He reluctantly recruits 13's aide to seize that list of conspiracy supporters at the Bristol Suites Hotel. This is another sneaking mission. Don't get seen by the goons on the way to the room across from the meeting room, which is a bit harder than I would have thought. In the room, you use the new fancy spy microphone to listen in on the conversation. 5 and 9 are here as expected, but the mongoose has also shown himself, complicating things. 9 goes off on how he's convinced all the major levers of power to fall in line with the conspiracy. Of course, as soon as 5 actually looks out the window, he can see your dumbass just standing there with the mic. Both conspirators make a break for it, but are shot and unalived by 13. Unfortunately, the mongoose evades capture once again. But 13 now has the location of this sanctuary conspirators have been mentioning. There, it's just a quick sneak through the gardens and underground ruins to find the inner sanctum of the Clan of 20. And here, my friends, is where the clan robes are shown in all their distasteful glory. I was quite literally shouting in disbelief when I saw that I was fighting the clan, complete with dramatic speeches about ridding the parasites of society. This was the absolute last twist I expected when I got to this point. It almost feels too on the nose, but it's in the comic too, so I guess they're sticking to the source material. 13 fights the clan in some helicopters before getting his skin saved by Major Jones once more. The next stop is the home of Walter Sheridan, US Senator and brother of President William Sheridan, who was assassinated by Steve Rowland. There, yourself, Carrington, and Amos lay out the situation at hand. Walter Sheridan is in disbelief at the totalitarian plot to overthrow democracy. Luckily, he has the clearance to get 13 into SSH-1, the location of the command center for Operation Total Red. 13 can save America and identify number 1 in a fell swoop. At SSH-1, 13 as Colonel Marshall is stopped at security by Calvin Wax, Secretary of Defense. The facility is under strict lockdown for the duration of the operation. So 13 has to sneak around, smacking soldiers in the back of the head and stowing them in corners. These are innocent Americans, not enemy combatants. They deserve a modicum of respect. Deep in the facility, 13 is ambushed by General Stadwell and his SPAD soldiers. They have taken former Vice, now President Galbraith hostage and are moving forward with Operation Total Red. Stadwell goes down easy though. Galbraith is having a panic attack and proceeds to pass out. 13 then has to fireman carry the president through the corridors of this secret military base while engaging in a firefight with SPAD goons. Eventually you find an infantryman to leave him with. Thus begins what is the highlight of the game for me. It is a guns blazing firefight in the middle of the command center with some fantastic music. All while Calvin Wax is attempting to talk you out of your current actions. He is locked in a control room and can only watch as his conspiracy unravels. But as you confront Wax, he activates the base's self-destruct sequence and does not give you the satisfaction of one last boss fight. His body reveals that he is only number 2 and the identity of number 1 remains a secret. Thankfully, Senator Sheridan is locked in a nearby room and knows the access code to the nuclear silos. 13 destroys the machinery and it looks like everything's going to be okay. But you forgot about the mongoose! He's still kicking and ready to give you the satisfaction of one last boss fight. And man, if it isn't a good one. The mongoose's AI seems to be the one that's been most tuned because he is a sneaky bastard. But he absorbs lead just like all the other conspirators. The mongoose plummets down a silo, but not before demanding to know who 13 really is. All this time, he has been harboring his suspicions that you weren't Roland. He even calls you Jason Fly at the start of this fight, but this final demand leads me to believe that he isn't so sure of that either. And with that, 13 has saved America from falling into a totalitarian dictatorship. The epilogue begins to roll. Walter Sheridan becomes the next president of the United States. 13 is exonerated, but left with absolutely no details about his past as Jason Fly. He's yet again a man without an identity. We have one last final walkabout on Sheridan's yacht to celebrate his electoral victory. Colonel Amos FBI, Jones, and Carrington are there to offer you their congratulations as America's hero. The whole scene is complete with an amazing fireworks display. One that Walter Sheridan is ignoring for some reason. Instead, he's walking into the cabin with purpose. 13 opens a door to an oddly familiar looking hallway, one that you have seen in 13's fragmented memories. You can hear Kim Rowland crying behind a door, begging for Walter to return her son. Walter audibly hits Kim and demands to know why she didn't eliminate 13 when she had a chance. They had a deal. Downstairs in a very familiar looking office is a phone with a supposedly dead mongoose calling for number 1. You have one last flashback to this very room. It is the same room where you were almost able to identify number 1. 13 is pulled from his memories by the arrival of Walter Sheridan and some bodyguards. He asks if the fireworks aren't to your liking before cutting to a to be continued screen. 13 leaves us on a cliffhanger, all but confirming Walter Sheridan is number 1 and the fate of 13 is unknown. The story of the game by itself is very entertaining. The pacing is fantastic. It starts slow, but really ramps up toward the end and leaves just enough questions unanswered that you want to know what happens next. And while there is no full video game sequel, there is a TV show and a mobile game you can play. Or you could do what I did and read the comic 13 is based off of. As with any adaptation, there's plenty of divergences from the source material here. The one I find most interesting is the complete removal of Betty. She's a SPAD sergeant 13 becomes involved with in the comic who is an unintentional material witness to the conspiracy. Her testimony is ultimately what leads to the downfall of the Clan of 20 in the comic. Another really interesting tidbit that is never even mentioned in the game is how Kim Rowland is General Carrington's daughter and was a double agent for the government all along. Or so it would seem, because that whole business with Kim's son is not one she had with Steve Rowland. Instead, it's a secret child she had with Walter Sheridan, one whom Sheridan uses as collateral to get Kim to do his bidding. Which, by the way, in the comic, we don't learn that Walter Sheridan is number 1 until we have a whole arc learning about Jason Fly's past. Oh, and the whole business with Steve Rowland's family fiasco is gone. It's a classic situation that ends with a dead patriarch, a backstabbed uncle, a soon-to-be very rich nurse wife, and a framed 13. Seriously, there's enough divergence that I could spend another 1,000 words describing them all to you. Unfortunately, I still have 2 more sections to write, and this is already getting very wordy for my liking. Surprisingly, 13 has a multiplayer mode that is actually kind of fun. It's basically the gameplay of the campaign, but against respawning enemies. Unfortunately, I only played a bot match because I could not find anyone on the fan servers. But hey, they exist if you want to set a game night up with friends. For me, the remake is a mixed bag. A real improvement is that the guns feel much more accurate, especially since there's a dedicated aim down sight for pretty much every weapon in the remake, though I see that quoted as a negative for some. But then I see my own personal negatives. My movement speed seems slower for the sole purpose of giving me a sprint. Almost all of the sounds are ripped from the original game and they don't particularly gel well with the updated visuals. And none of these things are bad alone, but they add up, especially when nothing compares to the personal letdown that is the visual presentation. The remake's environments and NPCs have 10 times the amount of detail, but the shading is too complex. It's like trying to bridge the gap between photorealism and cel shading. And it doesn't work, especially since the animations look so wrong. I don't know how to describe it. Sometimes they're too stiff, other times they're way too loose. It feels more like something a small indie dev would put together as their first or second project in Unity or Unreal 4. And I think that's the greatest insult I can give the remake. Don't buy it. It's a waste of your money unless you want to avoid the inconvenience of patching your game. In all, if the remake is a mixed bag of nuts, then the original 13 is a mixed bag of nuts with M&Ms. The audio-visual presentation has aged fantastically due to its strong aesthetic. The gameplay is rather mediocre to subpar at times with a few high points here and there. But the story is the real standout part of the game for me, to the point that I wanted definitive answers to my lingering questions. I read the comic for those answers and recommend you do too if this seems up your alley. You can still grab the original 13 on Steam and GOG for only $6. I personally don't recommend the newer and shinier version that costs $30, but you do you. Another one bites the dust. I notice I haven't reviewed a weird strategy game in a while. I think it's time I fix that, and I know just the game. Thanks for watching.